Let's get this thing rolling.
Let's get this thing rolling. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Legit Leadership Live. I'm Raabia Shafi. I am delighted to welcome you to episode 10 of our Legit Leadership Live series. I am so happy that we are here with my buddy Mike Haas. Thank you, Mike, for being here and joining us.
Thank you for having me, Robbie.
Yes, you're more than welcome. We are super psyched to have Mike join. There's so much we're going to dive into and chat about. And you know what, Mike? Hold on one second. I am getting a note that says they're not seeing us, but I am. So I want to make sure we are good to go. Sometimes this can get a little finicky. Okay. I think I'm going to keep going, and then if we have issues, we'll jump.
Technology, we always blamed it on the G6, so that's okay.
This is the G6 right here. Okay, so well, thank you, Mike, for joining. And we, just as a quick reminder, I would say that Legit Leadership Live, for all of you tuning in, is an opportunity for us to have real conversations with leaders across all industries, ranging from healthcare, banking, finance, the U.S. military, nonprofit organizations, religious organizations. And it's a chance to connect with leaders who have led other people, who've worked with leaders, who are passionate about leadership. So we get into kind of the nitty gritty of what does it mean? How can we demystify what in fact leadership is? And how can we learn some practical tips to kind of keep growing and showing up as leaders who we want to show up as. So what we are doing today is chatting with the amazing Mike Haas. I am so psyched to chat with you. And Mike is, I will say, and actually you can share how we met, Mike, because it's kind of cool. I hold these experiences very fondly in my heart. So you want to share how we know each other?
Well, we were colleagues at Booz Allen Hamilton, finding a way to make lives better, and in part that had to do with the leadership development training for the United States Marine Corps, and that was pretty daggone cool. You were a powerhouse. So when you went and started your own consulting company up in New York, we've stayed together because I admire the leadership and the presence that you bring to bear on a wide variety of topics and challenges that our society is facing right now.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure working with you. And yes, Mike and I were colleagues down and we met in Stafford, Virginia. We were in Quantico, Virginia together at the United States Marine Corps base down there. So Mike, we are going to dive in a moment and share quite a bit and kind of get your take on what is leadership all about? What's it like to get in the mind of Mike Haas and kind of delve into your experiences? Can you share with us who you are and what you've done so far? And I can help to fill in the blanks in your bio as we move along.
Okay, well, not going to go down the bio road, other than it amplifies the subject that we're here to discuss, and that's my passion for learning as a leader, for growing as a leader, for being a servant leader, and for helping others uncover that same love for leadership and to learn to empower themselves to grow as leaders. Because one of the things I believe in wholeheartedly is if I ask the question, regardless of the size of the room, who's a leader here? Generally, what you'll get is you get people who raise their hands who are in positions of authority. Got it. No doubt you are invested with some level of leadership responsibilities, but the reality is we're all leaders, every single one of us. So when you point, you should be saying, I am a leader. Now, the question then becomes, how do we unearth that leadership potential, and how do we grow as leaders on purpose? Now, I started my journey as a Boy Scout taking a junior leader training course back in the in the in the early 1970s, and then teaching it. And then I joined the United States Marine Corps as a Marine Corps officer, and got exposed to more leadership. And what I discovered was everything I needed to know about leadership, I learned as a scout. Now, the variables change, the challenges change, and certainly the personalities change, the level of authority and positional discretion changes. So I don't want to trivialize the where leadership gets done. It gets done many different places, and many different variables are brought to bear. Myriad keeps coming to mind. So that's not the question. What we have to realize is that the immutable laws of leadership don't change. The environment may change, the challenges may change, the variables may change, and certainly the variables known as people change all the time. So, but that doesn't mean that we move away from those things about leadership that we know to be true and we know work. And so I guess that's where we're going to jump into this. Was that good? Is that what you wanted?
That's awesome. And thank you. And thank you, Mike, for your service. I know that you've spent some time, serving the United States through the Marines and through these other activities. So we all appreciate that very much.
Well, my honor to serve. And then when I got out of the Marine Corps, I continued to serve those who serve our nation by being a defense contractor and consultant for the Marine Corps, among others. So, yeah, it's been a lifetime commitment for me to be a leader so that I could help make this world a better place. Because you know what? I'm going to boil it down to one of the simplest things. If I'm walking across the street, not while I'm in the crosswalk in front of cars that are moving, but if I'm crossing the street and I see a piece of garbage and I pick it up and put it in a trash can, boom, I've just been a leader. And I probably don't even know who's going to follow that example and clean up some other mess on their own as well. So when we overcomplicate leadership as far as technique and managerial and program management and all that great stuff that leaders have to wrestle with, we're overcomplicating the leadership equation.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's do this. Let's demystify it. Let's uncomplicate it. You mentioned earlier that there are some immutable kind of aspects of leadership that, regardless of industry, right, regardless of what level you're at, that can serve as kind of the anchors or those grounding pieces or building blocks, if you will. Can you walk us through, based on your perspective and your experience, what are those components of leadership that you've seen are just solid and unmoving?
Okay, now this is going to be part of the challenge. The answer to that question is there are so many. So let me start with this thought. There are three tough questions that when I mentor leaders, I require them to answer before we move forward to answer the question you asked. All right. One, can you define your unique leadership lens? In other words, what's the lens through which your leadership choices and decisions are made? Because one of my creeds is who we are becoming as leaders is measured by every choice and every decision we make in everyday moments of every day. So if you don't know what that lens is that focuses your choices and your decisions, or that polish that lens so that it stays nice and bright and clean for you. So for instance, if your lens is getting promoted, or your lens is, making lots of money, that's going to be what focuses your choices and your decisions. If being the best leader you can be is the lens, then you're going to be making choices through that lens. So the question is, can you define that leadership lens? And the advice that I give after that is pan for gold nuggets. You asked that question. There are so many books that are written, and like Dr. Travis Bradberry on Talent Smart,
Yeah.
he comes out with lists all the time of things that leaders could do, should do, shouldn't do. Um, all of that is worth digesting and inhaling. Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, blah, 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 blah. I could go on and on and on. The point being that there's no simple answer to your question, but we should always be panning for gold nuggets. Everywhere we go, everything we read, we should be purposefully educating ourselves. So I'm not going to give an answer to that question other than to say, go forth and learn. Because if I started listing those things, we'd never get to the end of the list by the end of the hour. The third question is, what's your plan for growing as a leader on purpose? So if you're not panning for gold nuggets, if you have no idea what the lens is that's focusing your decision, and you don't have a plan for growing as a leader on purpose, then all of the other things that would be answers to the question you asked are moot.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about creating the fertile ground from which you can then plant those seeds of the qualities and aspects of leadership. Now, I'm not going to lie. In my Haas operating system, and by the way, I never called it that. My Marines called it that. So in 1998, when I had the honor of commanding Com Company, 3rd FSSG, I had 4 pages of written notes that I used to talk to my Marines upon taking command. I distilled them after getting some feedback from them, from my staff NCOs, officers, and the other Marines. And I turned it into a list of bullets that I then made sure that every new join to Com Company heard the same spiel, the same thing. My Marines dubbed it the Haas operating system. Ever since then, I've distilled it into front and back bullets, and I have refined it over time. I assess myself against it every year, and I revise it every year based upon what I've learned. So I'm always panning for gold nuggets, and I'm always learning things from other people. And that's the beauty part of developing a leadership lifestyle on purpose. You learn on purpose, you grow on purpose. And we'll talk a little bit later about how do you capture those lessons to make sure that you can grow on purpose. For me, though, Raabia, at the kind of the top line, if you would, of the Haas operating system reads, build and empower a high trust team culture focused through a lens of principle-centered servant leadership. I can't get over the character aspects of being a leader and the principle-centeredness of that, the servant leadership mentality of that, the high trust environment that you create around you will either be a force multiplier or just the opposite. So if people don't trust each other on your team, not only are you failing as a leader, that team is doomed to fail, because Stephen Covey said it's trust that transforms a group of people into a team.
Yeah.
So I now I could go on and on, but I would say the first thing that I will offer to your original question is character ethic. Character. You can train someone on skills. You cannot make someone a person of character if that isn't part of their makeup. So,
I want to thank you, Mike, for that kind of overview, because one of the things I'm excited to delve into is that Haas operating system and that key line about trust. And one of the things you and I have spoken about, in our friendship and in our conversations is what happens when you have an environment where it might be toxic, or there might be aspects that are cultivating a kind of lack of trust, or kind of that antithetical kind of aspect of, piece of what you're speaking of. How does one, as a leader, navigate that? How does one take accountability over that? What do we do really to navigate an environment that's festering lack of trust?
That's a great question. And of course, the answer is It depends. So what is the root cause of the lack of trust? Is it um, senior leaders? Is it mid-tier, managers? Is it um, toxic employees? Because there's a difference for how to handle um, different levels of that. Kind of the canary in the coal mine becomes the people who are leaving as a result of toxicity. I've seen it a number of times, and I'm not sure who to attribute it to, but people don't leave bad companies; they leave bad managers or bad leaders, and there's a lot of truth in that. So when it comes to the toxicity, where it's located is important. And what I can tell you is, I fired extraordinarily talented technical people who were toxic to the team because it was addition through subtraction. You got to get the right people on the bus and get the wrong people off the bus.
Off the bus.
Now, when it comes to toxic leaders, there's some good stuff that's been published out there on handling a toxic leader if it's your leader. And that is poisonous, and there's no doubt. And I know many people leave jobs because of that. Yeah. My recommendation to senior leaders in any organization is, if HR isn't doing it now, have them do exit interviews. Get briefed by HR on the exit interviews and see if there are arrows that are continuing to point back to the same toxic leaders or toxic people who are the result or part of the reason for someone choosing to leave. Now, not everybody's going to do that, and you have to look for trends, because if you just take one employee's snipe
anomalies, yeah.
So now if senior leaders are unwilling to invest their time in discovering where the toxicity is and removing it like a cancer, because it will kill teams and will kill organizations, then they need to look themselves in the eye in the mirror and ask what they're really trying to do for their company. What are they trying to do to create a culture that empowers people? What are they actually doing to remove toxic leaders? Or how about this? How about train leaders? There's a worthwhile investment, because I've never seen a leadership training program worth its salt that doesn't start with the whole character ethos and the issue of relationships. I mean, leadership is a relationship business. And if you don't get that, you should step out of the way and let someone take charge who does get that.
Yeah.
Whew, man, you get me.
Getting you riled up there, Mike. Well, let me ask you, because I know you've been in the world of leadership by virtue of your Marine Corps experience, Boy Scouts, and all these other kind of aspects here. I would be curious to know, and maybe we can zero in on either of those two, the Marines or Boy Scouts. What are some ways that those have either helped to inform or refine your take on leadership? Like, what are some maybe anecdotes or circumstances you could share with us that really gets you, I don't say riled up, but you have a very kind of solid compass, Mike, and a zero tolerance policy on BS when it comes to leadership. How did those experiences kind of help to cultivate that for you? What have you seen there and experienced?
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to start with one slight correction. It's no longer Boy Scouts. It's Scouts BSA. Because young ladies are in with the young men, and they're all growing as leaders. And so, I thought that was a tremendous value-added change that BSA went after. Anyway, so what happened was I was exposed at first to leadership skills through the junior leader training course that I took when I was 11 years old. Then I had a chance to staff that course like a year and a half later and train other scouts in the same things. Well, when you teach, you learn more than you did when you sat as a student.
Yeah.
And then I went to a national youth leader training course with scouts from all over the country. And we lived for a week, living and using the skills on purpose. So I think what happened over time was I kept getting exposed to leadership skills, leadership characteristics, and then of course joining the Marine Corps. DDJ Tie Buckle. It's an acronym that lists out the leadership traits. Well, one of the things that I ask, here's a tidbit for you. One of the things I ask the lieutenants that I mentor is take those 13 leadership traits and rank order them from most important to least important. Leaving them in the order the Marine Corps gave them to you is lazy. Go do the drill. And if you want to talk with me about it, if you're on here and you want my contact information, just DM me through LinkedIn. Sure. When you do that kind of discipline drill, you start to answer the question about what your lens is. Because the order of the list is not important, except for that it's important to you. But now answer the question, why are the first 5 at the top? And why are they in that order? You made a conscious choice to rank order them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why in that order? And then your bottom 3. Why are they the bottom 3? What is that saying about your leadership lens through which you are seeing the world? Now, date that, and I urge everyone that I do this with to redo it every year, kind of like I do the Haas operating system, or when you get promoted, or when you move to a new billet. Because what will happen is, based upon the experiences that you've had, you will find the list changing in order. And then the question doesn't become why the top 5, why the bottom 3, but why the change?
Why the change? Wow.
Yeah. Because we mature and grow as leaders. But how do we see that? How do we give ourselves tools to actually see that growth? Yeah. Look, most people, most leaders, but most people go through life gathering lessons through osmosis. That means we experience life. If we don't capture the lessons that we've grabbed, that we've been exposed to, that we brought to our lives, right. Then we will only remember what I call the significant emotional events. We'll remember the very good, and we'll remember the very bad. But everything else in between gets lost, which is why I encourage leaders to journal and capture their lessons. Capture your gold nuggets. You're panning for gold nuggets. Here's the clue on gold nuggets, folks. Nobody has all the answers, but everybody has one. So the moment we turn our backs on that one idiot, that one annoying, I guess that's still judgmental. Okay, once we turn our back on a fellow human being, we may be depriving ourselves of the gold nugget that they came here to teach us.
Right. Wow.
Worse is we may be depriving them of the gold nuggets we came here to offer them. So we should always be panning for gold nuggets. Yeah. They're everywhere. They're in movies. They're in stories. I can go on and on about websites. There's a number of them on LinkedIn that are worth following. Keep panning for gold nuggets. Keep learning on purpose.
Yeah, I love the intention behind that. And one of the things, Mike, that you mentioned is, annually you go back and you self-assess according to your operating system, and you encourage your young, budding leaders to be able to do that and see where the shifts and changes are. My question for you is, how can we be honest and true about our own self-assessment? Because we can be our toughest critics, and then that can put us, on one end of the spectrum. And then sometimes we think we're, I don't want to say cooler than maybe we are, but it's all relative, but maybe we see ourselves in a different light than others. It's kind of subjective based on our opinions. How do we, how do we kind of put in that lens of self-assessment in a way that it's cultivating more growth, more leadership? Like what are some things that you consider when doing that to ensure there's some level of accuracy, or I would just say kind of that gut check in there that's as honest as possible?
Wow, that's a great question. First thing that came to mind is seek a trusted mentor. So we're all guilty of, we know what we know about ourselves, and we can, what's the word I'm looking for? We can kid ourselves about those things that are challenging or needing self-improvement. But one of the leadership principles that I think is immutable is to know myself and seek self-improvement. If you commit to that path, then you're much more willing to be honest, because the return on investment is there. If you aren't going to seek self-improvement, then you don't need to know anything about yourself. You can just drift along like whatever you want to do, and it doesn't matter. So a part of it is taking some time to be introspective. Write down what's most important to you as a leader. Write down your gold nuggets. One of the things that I urged for people who are starting down this road is start a gratitude journal. This is easy. Anybody can do it. What are you thankful for? And write down 5 things every day. You cultivate an attitude of gratitude. You will appreciate this. Feedback is a gift. But the moment you get your ego in the way, the moment that you take feedback from people instead of being meant to help us as a way to poke us or hurt us, then we stop looking at feedback as a gift, and we see it as a challenge. So we also, good leaders, have to get their egos out of the way. You cannot grow when your ego stands in the way, because your ego is always telling you, oh, you're good to go. You're perfect. You got nothing to work on. Man, you got this wired. And that's okay to be confident.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between being confident and not being open to feedback.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mike, because one of the workshops that I think that I'll work on with colleagues, I think that you do that as well, is how to give constructive feedback and also how to receive constructive feedback. Because in some organizations, feedback is the F word, right? No one wants to.
I'm going to use that. I like that.
Right. No one really wants to hear it or deal with it. They're like, yeah, let me just keep that, drop it off on the side of the road and not necessarily incorporate it. And you mentioned the word ego, which plays such a huge role as it relates to leadership. And I'm just wondering, like, in your experience so far, how have you seen, or I would say, how would you describe the relationship between ego and leadership and leading people? What role does it play? Where does it block you? You kind of were mentioning before, in some ways it can be like, oh, you're good to go. No, you have nothing to worry about. But what have you seen in your own experience there?
Oh man, I hate to quote myself, but
I quote you, Mike. It's all
be
good.
strong in character first, last, and always. Knowledge, skills, and abilities can be taught and developed. Ethics cannot thrive in arid soil, nor survive the slow drip of egocentric poison. Ego is toxic. Confidence is a force multiplier. Mutual respect for teammates. Not seeing people with different ideas as a threat. These are all the things that happen when you get your ego out of the way. Otherwise, ego is poison. And people will stop feeling comfortable offering ideas that contradict with the leader's ideas. Groupthink, and there's lots of case history for that. And so how do you get your ego out of the way? Years of counseling and thousands of dollars. To be honest with you, I have no idea other than to offer this. Humility can be practiced. True servant leaders are humble. True servant leaders put the good of the group and the mission before themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Here's something that I tried once, and it worked so phenomenally well. I considered it one of the gold nuggets I taught myself.
Mm.
If somebody offers up an idea that I think is a good one as the leader of that team, and I want to take it up higher in the organization, I take it up higher. If it turns out to be a good idea, I give the person who came up with it all the credit.
All the credit.
I'm just the mouthpiece. If it turns out to be a bad idea that the senior folks hate and they, shoot me in the chest, figuratively speaking, I take it. My choice to bring it up the chain. I would never turn around and throw that. That was John's idea. So I think that's, if you start thinking as a servant leader, if you start to practice humility, if you start giving credit where credit is due, you start to lose the ego. So you have to replace ego with something.
That's okay. So what do you replace it with in your mind after years of working on this? I know you mentioned humility is one thing, because we don't just take it out and then there's an empty hole. Something's gotta go in there. What have you seen that we can kind of plug in place of that?
Care about your people. Show you care about your people. Demonstrating genuine, and there's a key and important word, and authentic caring for your people will go a long way to humbling you as a leader, because you're going to be much more interested in what makes it possible, what empowers them, what makes it possible for them to do their best. How can I make the team do even better, et cetera, et cetera. If the focus of your life becomes replacing that egocentric lens with a servant leadership lens that's focused on your team, you stand if you're actually going to work on that, I mean, if you recognize your ego as something that's interfering with your effectiveness as a leader, again, seek a mentor. There's a lot to that, and you're right. I would say respect. How do you get ego out of the way? What do you replace it with? Gold nuggets. Pan for gold nuggets. Every time you learn something from someone else, whether it's a book or an article or conversation with your fellow human being, and you acknowledge that lesson learned, you realize that it's not all about you. And you start to be able to become #gratitude about, oh wait, my kids hate when I do this. #gratitude. So you start to become appreciative of what others have to offer in your life. And that is the opposite of ego.
Got it. It's so interesting, right? It kind of comes full circle that this comes back to the immutable piece that these immutable pieces that you're speaking of, right? Whether it's gratitude, putting people first, humility, servant leadership, all of it is kind of chipping away at those things like ego, or kind of the ripple effect of ego that might stand as roadblocks to us as developing as leaders on purpose. So I love that connection there, Mike. And I wanted to go back to something you mentioned about journaling, which is kind of en vogue now, but it's not something new to you. I know you mentioned that there's kind of a practice that you like to cultivate in terms of developing your leadership style. I'm happy to kind of share my screen if you want, and maybe you can talk us through some of those practical pieces or exercises that you advocate for in terms of helping leaders grow. Do you want to dive into that?
Yeah, let's do this. And for everybody who's bared with me as I got up on my leadership love affair soapbox, The development of your own operating system as a leader is critical
Yes.
to expanding. And what that really becomes is a compilation of all the gold nuggets that you've gleaned over the years. And when I say I see leadership lessons everywhere, I can see leadership lessons in a 30-second commercial. I see it on television shows and movies all the time. One of my favorite quotes: "Attitude reflects leadership, Captain," from Remember the Titans.
There you go.
So, we as leaders are kind of like the lighthouse for our people, and if you're not surveying the area and taking in data and gathering gold nuggets
Yeah.
on purpose in order to develop your leadership lifestyle on purpose, then you're really not doing your best to become the best leader you can for your people.
Totally.
And that last phrase is not a throwaway: for your people.
Yeah.
And you don't own them, but you should feel like you are responsible for everything they do or fail to do, and for all the rest of the culture that you create as a leader in order to ensure that there's empowerment. Because I'll tell you what, when good people don't want to come to you with bad news, it's not on them. Trust me.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you say that one more time? When good
No, I don't
people,
listen to myself.
okay, I'm going to say it again. I loved it. When good people don't come to you with bad news, that's not on them.
Right.
There is a reason for it. And it has to do with the level of trust they may have in you. It has to do with the type of culture that you've cultivated for the team or for the organization. That's huge, Mike.
Well, I'll take it a next step further.
Yeah.
How many of you are good at forgiving mistakes? Huh? No, because, I'm perfect and I never make mistakes. And so I never have to worry about that. No, of course, we all make mistakes. It's part of the way we learn.
Yeah.
But on your team, if people make mistakes and they get beaten every time it happens, or every time anything little goes awry,
Yeah.
and you're looking to blame people instead of figure out why didn't that work the way we expected to, hold that assessment and ask the team the questions. SSC, this comes from scouting too: start, stop, continue. What do we need to start doing that we didn't do this time? What do we need to stop doing because it didn't add value, or worse? And what do we need to continue doing because, yay us, some stuff actually worked?
Right.
If you're not doing that with your people and giving them a chance to be part of a future better solution, and you're taking all of that on yourself,
Yeah.
you're depriving people of great opportunities to grow themselves. And I'm trying to remember now where I read this, who wrote it, but good leaders develop people. Great leaders develop other leaders. And there's really no difference between people and leadership. I already talked about that. Everybody's a leader. Everybody's a potential leader, and everybody can grow as a leader on purpose. So let me give you a tool that I've been using now. I've been teaching this now for 23 years. I developed it in order to teach leadership to my Marines. And so it's a simple model because I wanted them to be able to get it. The quote up there is mine and talks about developing a leadership lifestyle. And this is all about doing that on purpose. Next slide, please. So the first thing you have to do is get a handle on what your leadership lens is, or how your leadership lens is polished on a regular and reoccurring basis. And that becomes the ethical traits, principles, and values through which you're focusing your leadership choices. If you don't know what those are, well, let's talk. But I mean, you do know what they are. Taking the time to write stuff down brings clarity. It also serves as a springboard. It also serves as a way for you to go back and remind yourself what you were thinking at the time.
Yeah.
All right, next slide, please.
Sure.
So, bottom line, leadership is a lifestyle choice. So when I do this class, and I'm going to take you through the quick 5-minute version or less. So we have two categories of people from whom we learn. myself, and that would leave others. And then there are things that we like about our leadership choices and decisions and characteristics. And guess what? There are things we dislike.
Oh, I don't know where the dislike is. Oh, there we go.
There we go. So here's the thing. You can create this however you'd like in a notebook, analog guy, or you can do it in a document. The bottom line is you're going to learn lessons. All the lessons that you learn are available in these 4 boxes. So if there are things about myself that I like, what am I going to do with those things? Click. I'm going to look to sustain those. I'm going to maintain those. I'm going to grow those. I may refine those, but I like it. So I'm going to keep it. Now, when we see things in others that we like, what do? We can choose to emulate it. You can't copy it. This gets back to being genuine and authentic.
Yep.
You can emulate it and make it your own. And that's what good leaders do.
Yeah.
And if you think of the examples in your lives, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, if you see things in others that you dislike, how many of you have ever said, I will never do that if I get into a leadership role, right? Those are powerful teachers because they're teaching you what pitfalls to avoid, what doesn't work, what's dangerous, what destroys a team. And so you can consciously avoid that. And that is also a choice, to consciously avoid doing things that you dislike in what you see in others. Now, the area where you dislike things about yourself, guess what? Yay! This is where you have chances to improve. And so everything in the other 3 quadrants is designed to move into the things you like about yourself, because if you consciously decide to avoid something, that's something you like about yourself as a leader. Okay. Yes. So the bottom line is journal. And you can grow leaders on purpose, develop leaders on purpose through learning, through gathering gold nuggets. Yeah. So pick a leadership trait, principle, law, whatever it is you want to talk about, and then click, start journaling. Do it every week. Pick one leadership trait or principle and study it for the week. What are the lessons you see in yourself that you want to sustain? What are the things that you see in others that you want to emulate? What are the things you want to avoid? And the only thing I would ask is don't use names in the others category. I mean, for emulate, yeah, I suppose that's positive, but for avoid, people don't want to see their names in that quadrant. So bottom line is leadership is a lifestyle choice.
Yes.
And we can, by journaling, we can become masters of our own click.
Oh, wait, of our own
leadership. See what I did there? Okay.
Oh, leadership. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. All right. So those who've been in the Marine Corps with me will appreciate the nautical reference. And if there are any Sea Scouts out there. All right. So here's another drill to put yourselves through.
Can I click?
Next slide. Yes, please. Vanity license plate. What can you say about yourself in 7 or 8 letters? Who am I? Who do I choose to be? How do I choose to be known? Who do I choose to become? If you can do that, you're beginning to say something about yourself that gets true to you. Semper Fi is good.
Semper Fi is great. I see it.
So, but it's taken. No, I'm kidding. Whatever defines you. But can you do it in 7 or 8 letters? Just the mental drill of doing this is so powerful. Next slide. So the question becomes, what gold nuggets have I mined? They can come from scripture. Love your neighbor as yourself. They can come from teachers. That which is hateful to you, do not do to others. They can come from movies. Attitude reflects leadership, Captain. I've given you some today. Journal your leadership lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Grow as a leader on purpose.
Grow as a leader on purpose. I love that. I love that. And Mike, I think one of the things you're touching on that you and I were so aligned on is I am not a fan of fly
You
by
can
the.
exit out of that, by the way. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Raabia.
Oh, that's okay. Are we good there? And thanks for sharing that. One of the things that I feel like we're so aligned on is we don't, you could do fly by the seat of your pants leadership, but how much more impactful can you be when you're intentional about it? I'm not a fan of, hey, you're either born a leader or you're not. I think it's a skill set that we develop and we can cultivate along the way. I don't know anyone who was born like out of the womb really giving great feedback or really being great at giving credit. It comes with the investment of time and energy. And I wanted to thank you because I think what a practical quadrant to work off of. And I love how you made that into a gold nugget itself. Pick something and focus on it for the week. We don't need to make this, how do we kind of what's that phrase? Small changes, big impact. It sounds like that's something that you're aligned with as well.
Oh, absolutely. And you just gave me a gold nugget because I don't know that the word intentional appears anywhere in my Haas operating system, but that is a very powerful word because intent becomes a commitment.
Yeah.
And a commitment to growth is different even than growing on purpose. So next year you may see the Haas operating system with the word intent speckled throughout it. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, it feels so cool to incorporate that. And I think we have our buddy Brian Conrad really liked your dad joke about steering that ship. So there you go.
Thanks, Brian.
Yes. So, Mike, I would love to. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your time, your energy. It's honestly like my community and clients who work with me know that I reference the Marine Corps all day. I'm like FYSA for your situational awareness, and I say AAR after action report. I'm probably the most annoying consultant and coach, but I love it. I have learned so much in partnering with you, with the Marine Corps down in Quantico, and Drew Watson, Zach Johnson. Like all of you are just such wonderful characters in my in the play of my life as well. So I'm really delighted to have you, and I'm wondering before we jump off, what else, if anything, in terms of advice or kind of like practical tips, or as you have been saying, gold nuggets, what else would you like to share or could you offer to our audience of high potential, amazing leaders, up and coming in their careers, some who are, very tenured? What would you like to offer them before we jump off and to kind of continue to move on in this week with some really intentional, helpful mindsets?
We should all set the best possible example we can. We have to live what we preach. Walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And we got to remember that leadership lifestyle that we're portraying is reflected in every choice we make in everyday moments of every day. So every time we open our mouths, we're either empowering and pushing the ball up the hill with the team, or we're undermining and we're distracting. So a couple of quick things. I can't get over this enough. Be principle centered, ethical, professional, always.
Always.
Moral courage plays its part there as well. Cultivate that attitude of gratitude because you'll start to actually thank people around you for doing good work and doing the right things. And because you feel gratitude, you start to feel gratitude for little things like potable water, okay? A piece of food on your plate, and you start to expand from there, and it starts to become a way of, again, looking through your leadership lens. Well, I'll take this from the Scout Oath. help other people at all times.
Mm.
Somebody once told me a very powerful leadership lesson. Um, uh, if you need help, ask for it. If you're asked for help, give it. Boom. If that doesn't
So
define people
mm-hmm.
who take care of each other in a team, um, be impeccable in your speech. By the way, that comes from the Four Agreements. And if you've not read that book, I urge you to do so.
Great.
And if you ever want a bibliography, then please DM me and we can talk all day long about what leadership books I've read. But folks, just grab everything, anything. Just follow the LinkedIn and read the short articles that are posted there and ideas and memes that are posted there. So many gold nuggets out there.
Yeah, soak it up. Mm-hmm.
Be respectful and kind and always assume best intentions. All right. Because too many times there's disagreements and fallouts on teams, not because actually anybody meant to hurt anybody, but because somebody made an assumption about what was intended. So assume best intentions. This goes along with helping other people, but cultivate an abundance mentality. Because what that does is, you rise, all boats rise. But if you just like, no, this is my water, only my ship shall float. That's selfish.
Yeah.
And along those lines, seek win-win solutions. Go out of your way to understand the what's in it for me from another's point of view. That's part of respect, but it's hard to do. Try it. Try stopping answering the question you've just asked and listen for what's coming to you. We talked about some of these other things, perseverance and enthusiasm. Let's have fun. It's a lot more fun on a team that's actually enjoying each other and making progress and celebrating progress. How often do we do that? We are successful, we do great, and then we move on to the next thing instead of taking a moment and going, yay, us.
Yeah.
So, and I'll harp on this one, commit to a path of lifelong learning and growth. If you get nothing else out of this time we've spent together in my big fat mouth, let's take charge of our own development as leaders and do it on purpose rather than living life through osmosis.
Yeah. Mike, I think that is such a beautiful note to end on, this whole on purpose, right? And I am so delighted that we've gotten to know one another over the years. And I still remember the first thing you said to me when I met you down in Quantico. And you said, the only thing I'm worried about, Raabia, is you're going to have to kind of keep the ground spinning from underneath you, because you have a lot to develop and a lot to grow. And I know you saw my potential, and you shared that with me very openly. And that's been something that I just I treasure so much. I think you're very generous with your coaching, your leadership, your knowledge, your insights, your anecdotes. I'm watching all these comments come through, and folks are so delighted to have you on here and kind of soak up what you have to offer. So thank you so much, Mike. Thank you to all of our leaders who are tuning in from all over the world. So delighted to have you. Feel free to reach out, Mike, right? Is that cool if folks send you a direct message on LinkedIn if they have any other questions?
Well, since I'm retired now, it's one of the things I live for. Just be aware, if you want me to help guide your growth as a leader, I will be a mentor. I will not be an advisor. And here's the difference. I will ask you the questions. You and I will agree on when you've answered it fully and truthfully. So if you're ready for that kind of
you're ready for my Haas.
tough love affair, DM me and let's talk.
I love that. I love that. And I can speak from experience. He really is a man of his word. You are going to be asked some real solid questions that are going to help you grow. So Mike, thank you again. It's been a delight having you on, and to our folks who took the time today to tune in, really, really appreciate it. Oh, I see a note from Marlise
Oh
from
my gosh.
Alan. Oh, what
Thank
a
you,
good.
everybody, for paying attention for a whole hour. Holy
I
smoke.
know. I know. Well, thank you again. Stay tuned for the next episode 11 coming up soon. And Mike, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day and your week. And give my best to your family and all the grandkids. I know you have an operation going on there.
There's one last thing that I realized you and I talking about, but of course, an hour is only an hour, and that's the subject of diversity. And somebody's been posting one team, one fight. Right. Absolutely. The best teams are ones where the diversity that every individual brings to the table is respected, cultivated, and enabled in order for the team, because a team is greater than the sum of its parts. But that's only if everybody is allowed to bring everything they have to the table.
Yeah.
So never dismiss people just because they're different, have different ideas, or come at the world from a different perspective. They may have that gold nugget for you.
For you. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I couldn't agree more, right? The more different our perspectives are, the more we can contribute to innovation and just making things better. Because if we all looked and talked the same, it'd be boring. So
It would be very boring.
totally. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Mike. And we will see you soon. Have a lovely rest of your day or your evening, morning, wherever you're tuning in from. Take care. Thank
Live
you.
long and prosper, everyone.
And Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
All right. Thank you.